Royal Institution, let's talk about sex then, shall we? So, sex is strange, sex is bizarre, and sex is weird. And therefore, good old Darwin had to write about it. He wrote this book, The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex. It was a sequel to the slightly more well-known Origin of Species. But just like any good sequel, it wasn't quite as popular as the original. But that's not to say that it wasn't a complete creative masterpiece, ladies and gentlemen. But the reason that Darwin was so interested in sex is because it can tell us a lot about evolution. And there are loads of stories, and hopefully I can lead you through some of the back streets of the sprawling metropolis that is Sodom and Gomorrah. It's fantastic, that, isn't it? I doubt it's real. But I can hopefully show you some of the sights along the way, but so that you don't get lost. You're probably wondering, who is this strange tour guide who walks into cheesy 80s classics? Well, this is me most of the time. I am an evolutionary biologist, and I spend a good part of my time watching flies having sex in test tubes. It is more interesting than it sounds, I promise. But the reason I do this is the same reason that Darwin did this, because it's what sex can tell us about the nitty-gritty of evolution. Because if you think about what you probably learned at school about evolution, it's all about surviving and reproducing. So chances are reproducing is going to be kind of important. So that's what I study. And you may have guessed this isn't going to be like your normal talk. And I thought about, what is it that most science talks lack? And the thing that they lack, ladies and gentlemen, is regular musical interludes of about 30 seconds or so to transition you seamlessly from one section of evolution to another. And just so you kind of get a flavor for what this is going to be like, we can have the first one. I'm always one for milking the drama. But there's a reason for the lyrics. So what do girls want? You've probably heard the story of the peacock's tail. This is where females pick the males with the longest, sexiest tails. And so the males with the longest, sexiest tails go on and do better. And so over time, you know all that. But there's a more important question going on here. And that's, why are the females doing the choosing in the first place? So I need a man. Right, story of my life. You, sir, hello. You look terrified. It's okay. What's your name?
Phil.
Phil, nice to meet you, Phil. Would you say you're an honest kind of chap?
Yes.
You would. I'm sorry to have to break this to you, Phil, but you are a cheat. Don't take it personally. All men are cheats, in a biological sense at least. Because if you think about it, we need one egg and one sperm to make an offspring. So females have to produce a massive egg. Males get away with producing a tiny, tiny sperm. Someone's getting the better end of the deal here. And so in evolutionary terms, we could argue that males are cheats. They're cheating the females by investing less. And actually, this investment is really important as to why females are doing the choosing. Because if you think males can afford to make loads and loads and loads of offspring, whereas females, especially in mammals like humans, you've got all the energy that it takes to produce a baby and then the lactation afterwards, and it just simply means that females can't afford to make as many offspring as males can. And we've got an example of this in humans, so let me introduce you to the lovely photograph of Mrs. Vassilyeva. Mrs. Vassilyeva, as you can see, beautiful woman, she was the wife of a Russian peasant in the 1700s, hence why we don't have a photo. But she holds the record for the largest number of children born to any single human female. That record is 69. 69 children to one female. All the women are wincing. She had this through 27 different births. So it's a mixture of twins and triplets, but 69! I bet all the people outside are wondering why I'm yelling 69 in a sex talk. But let's contrast that 69 with men. So this is a slightly more disputed record because obviously they didn't have Jeremy Kyle in those days. But this is Ismail ibn Sharif. I have no idea if I pronounced that right or not. He is a sultan, or was a sultan of Morocco in the 1600s. And he holds the record, most number of children born to any man. 860, ladies and gentlemen, 860. 69, 860. We can already see there's a bit of a difference between what males and females can produce. And then famously, most famously of all, Genghis Khan. So he had so many offspring that he is still leaving his legacy on the men in the Mongol area to this day. The men in this area have more similar Y chromosomes, the male chromosome, than they ought to because they all had this similar parentage. It's ridiculous. 69. So we can say that we've got the reasons that men and women have different things is because the men are competing for these tiny number of opportunities. And if you've got lots of men competing over you, you can afford to be picky. So what do women want? Well, they want this. Let's just take a moment, shall we? I mean, who wouldn't want that, really? It's obvious. Women want good genes. There we go. I don't know where your minds had gone. Thank you. It's not worth it. So women want good genes. But how are women going to get good genes? Because as we found from Phil here, males are cheats. And this is going to kind of be a running theme of this talk, is that if you can cheat, and if evolution allows you to cheat, then you really should cheat. It's the best strategy. So females need a way of working out which males have got good genes in a way that the males can't cheat. So they go from Armani to Argyle. This is what females find. No, it's not what females find attractive. No one can find that attractive, quite frankly. It is instead, if you like the last one, you're going to love this. Females look for handicaps. Hey! Not such a good reaction. But they do because the way that... so life is difficult. So you've got to survive birth. You've got to not die of an illness during childhood. You've got to survive all the way up to reproduction. And so if you can do that with a massive handicap, like a stupidly long, completely useless peacock tail that just gets you eaten by predators, if you can survive with a big handicap, you've obviously got great underlying genes and you're doing well at life. And we need to know that this system can't be cheated. So if a really bad male cheats and has a really good a big handicap, well, he's going to die. So that kind of weeds out the cheats because he can't afford to have this good handicap. But we've talked a lot about what women want from sex. So I think we should possibly take a little time to pause in reflection and think about what men want from reproduction. Feel free to dance if you want. Get a little boogie on. So love is a battlefield. What's all that about? So I hope you took those moments of calm to reflect on what men want from reproduction. Men want lots of sex. It's that simple. So men want as much sex as they can get. And this can cause a real problem for females because they end up being harassed by all of these horny males who just want to get it on. And there's so many of them. And so this can be really, really bad, this sexual harassment. And I've actually got an interesting anecdote about sexual harassment. Is a sentence you probably didn't expect to hear when you came out to the Royal Institution tonight, but I do, so I'm going to continue. I was doing a presenting job earlier this year for a kids' TV program. It was a pilot, and we were going to get a load of 4-year-olds, and we were going pond dipping. So animals and kids, great idea. And I've got all these 4-year-olds, and the producer thinks, wouldn't it be a great idea if we could get some frogs? And I think this is a great idea. I love frogs, they're cool. I know stuff about frogs, I can talk about frogs. But we couldn't rely on finding frogs in the pond where we were pond dipping. And so the producer calls around, and eventually the school where we're working at, some lovely lady has some frogs in her pond, puts them in a pot, brings them. So we'll get them out the pot on the day of filming, pretend we found them in the pond. Everything you see on TV is a lie. And then we'll go ahead, and it was great. And so I opened the pot on the morning that we're doing this. And I look. We filmed this back in February. No one here knows the frog life cycle. This is worrying. Okay, more clues. There were 2 frogs in the pot. There was a male and female frog in the pot. It was a male and female frog who were loving each other very much and giving each other a special cuddle. And I have a load of 4-year-olds that I have to show these frogs to. What am I supposed to do? So I try and separate them out. But the trouble is that frogs have this vice-like grip called amplexus. And it's a reflex. They do it so that if any other male tries to knock them off their female, they'll grip tighter and tighter. But they're so selfish in gripping tighter and tighter that they can actually end up suffocating the female by preventing her from coming to the surface of the pond and breathing, or just downright strangling her. So it's terrible, and this sexual conflict and this acting selfishly, and in the end, because no one wants to mate with a dead frog, right? So in the end, it's for the bad of everybody, but everyone does it for their own selfish gain. This is a tragedy of the commons, and this happens in loads of scenarios, but rather than just tell you about tragedy of the commons, because as you've probably guessed, I like a bit of a boogie, we're going to have a rave. Okay, so the deal is I'm going to transport you from the Faraday Theatre into the Wembley Arena, and I am living out my dreams as a rock goddess. And I am nailing this concert, I tell you. It is going great, and Phil here is just beside himself. He is such a fan, and he just can't contain himself. And at the moment, you've all got a really good view. You're all sitting down, so you're comfortable. So this is the best possible scenario you could be in. But Phil here, he's just having a bit of a boogie, and he's just getting so caught up in the emotion of it all that he stands up to get a better view of me. Come on, Phil. There we go. And he starts dancing. Way! Give it up a Phil. keep standing, sir. Keep standing. The concert isn't over yet. But now you see, the people behind, they're also massive fans because I'm just so good at this rock concert thing. But now they can't see, so they have to stand up to have a bit of a dance as well. Come on, sir, it's not too difficult. And then the people behind them, they can't see, so they have to stand up as well. Until the people behind them also can't see, so they also have to stand up. Everybody, standing ovation. Oh, you shouldn't have. Oh, that's so kind. And so I'm very disappointed with the level of this dancing, by the way. And so what you can see here is that everyone acting selfishly ends up that you all now have exactly the same view as you had before, because assuming that your sitting height and your standing height are the same, or proportional, I should say. And so, but now you're standing up, which is less comfortable, as I think Phil has shown us. And so you're all ending up in this tragedy of the commons. Yeah, you can all sit down now. I can turn this silly music off. But this was tragedy of the commons. And it comes up loads and loads of times in overpopulation, or overfishing, overpollution. So it comes up all the time. And this is a real problem. And if you want to know the extent of sexual conflict, then you can YouTube explosive aversion of a duck penis. Before you do this, probably go into incognito mode, otherwise you'll have a browser search history that's almost as sordid as mine. But I actually checked this the other night. Over 1 million views on YouTube of a duck erection. What? I have an excuse to look at this sort of thing. I study sex, but what are other people doing? So moving away from duck penises, although there will be from now on quite a lot of penises in this talk, there's a big problem that I haven't been mentioning, and perhaps this next 80s classic can help us with that.
It's raining men. Hallelujah, it's raining men. Amen. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna let myself get absolutely soaking wet. It's raining men. Hallelujah.
So it's raining men. What could that possibly be a very tenuous link to? Well, the problem is that we've been thinking about females in this very Victorian way, like Darwin, thinking of females as coy individuals. They don't need that much sex in order to fertilize all of their eggs, and so they shouldn't want any more sex, and it's absolutely minimal because females are pure and coy and all that. Absolute bull. And so in most, or at least many of the species that we've studied, females like to mate lots and lots of times and lots of different males. This is female promiscuity, loaded term. You can tell which gender scientist came up with that one. And so they mate lots and lots of times, and this was really bizarre. So these male scientists couldn't possibly work out why females would want lots and lots of sex. It was a complete puzzle for them. And so there are actually quite a few reasons we know now. One of them being, if you mate with lots of different males, those males will cook you dinner. Nice and straightforward. So this is a bush cricket, and this is a spermatophylex. It's a ball of jelly. It's the equivalent of cooking a lovely gourmet meal. And so the more times a female mates, the more food she gets. Obvious. Some males, however, you may have found this out for yourself, are not very good in the kitchen. They're not very good at making a decent meal. So instead of cooking a meal, they just kind of offer themselves as food. So sexual cannibalism happens in quite a few spiders. This is the redback spider. And here the male will throw himself in the mouth of the female so that she can munch on him whilst he's inseminating her eggs. It sounds awful. The men are just like, sorry, he does what? And saying to their wives, don't get any ideas. But they do this because it actually makes quite a lot of sense when you think about it, because all the male needs to do is to reproduce and pass on his genes to the next generation. And so once he's inseminated the eggs, there's not really much point to him. And sorry, gentlemen, this is only spiders, I should add. And so this means that he has to, by feeding himself to the female, she's better fed, she'll make better offspring, and she's less likely to run away and sleep with another male if she's busy having some food. So it's win-win, really. Now, a quiz. We have the Adelie Penguin, we have the bonobo, and the capuchin on the theme of why females want more sex. Does anyone have an idea what links these three species? What do you think, sir?
I believe it's down to pair selection, so that if you don't quite know who the dad is, then all of them are going to be kind to the offspring, because it could be theirs.
So is it because they want to be kind?
Well, pass on their genes.
Yeah, because they're not sure about parentage. I wish it was. It's actually prostitution. Lovely that you come in with a lovely idea, but no, the prostitution links all of these animals. So the Adelie Penguins, these are the ones that were featured on a David Attenborough program recently. I say recently, I think it was a few years ago now. They live in the Antarctic and they make nests out of stones on the ice, and these stones are quite a scarce, valuable resource, so they're essentially like a currency. David Attenborough and the BBC decided to focus on the really cute penguin that stole the stone from his neighbour's nest when he wasn't looking. They failed to mention the fact that females will also exchange these rocks for sex. I don't know why that got past the editorial team, and you can insert your own joke about getting your rocks off in there. And bonobos, famous for making love, not war. They make sex with everything. But again, meat is a scarce resource, and it's the males that go and hunt the meat. So if the females want a change from their vegetable diet, then they'll just have sex in exchange for meat. And capuchins, I'm slightly, I shouldn't really be including them, but it's a great story. So these researchers trained capuchin monkeys to use money. They decided to, Yeah, I know, crazy. But they're like, okay, we'll give them coins and they can exchange them for food. And then the story goes, one researcher saw at the corner of his eye a male and a female. And what looked like the male handed the female a coin, and the female proceeded to have sex with the male. Unfortunately, we don't know the extent to which prostitution forms a valuable part of Capuchin economy, because the researchers then took great pains, it says, to prevent any of this from happening again. So we don't know why. But we've got all of these males fighting over each other now for these females, because these females are sleeping around. And this causes a big problem for the males, because now they've got their sperm competing in the same vagina as maybe another male's sperm. And only some of their sperm is going to go on and fertilize the eggs. And we call this sperm competition. And of course, when there's competition in biology, you can expect some pretty wacky adaptations. And because this is sex, they're as wacky as they come. So this is the penis of a seed beetle. I told you there'd be more penises. These are spines, and he uses this to scrape out the sperm from the previous male out of the female's vagina. It's as painful as it sounds. And I was told that no good science talk should be without bangs and explosions. So here is the male honeybee. After he bangs a female, his testicles explode. And this forms a strategy called copulatory plugs. The theory being, if I bung her up with my genitals, another male can't get his in either. It happens all over the place. But the scariest one, these are my fruit flies, back to what I was working on. These don't go for scraping out the sperm. These don't go for exploding balls. Their sperm has the power of mind control. Yeah. So the females, when they absorb this protein in the ejaculate called sex peptide, it alters them. Yeah, fly people, right? So original with names. It alters their mind so that they're less likely and more reticent to mate again. It also has the unfortunate side effect of making her die faster, which means that if she mates lots and lots of times, she ends up with a drastically reduced life expectancy. It's tough being a female fruit fly, trust me, I work on them. And we're coming to the end of the talk now, and everyone always asks me, but what about humans? And humans do have some level of sperm competition, and this is possibly my favorite study of all. Somehow, some scientists got the funding to bring in a load of men and get them to wank off to pornography. And this pornography either contained threesomes with 2 men and 1 woman. So in this scenario, you would have this sperm competition. The male kind of perceives subconsciously that he's against a rival male. Or they were using pornography which had 2 females and 1 male. And so in this case, there's no rivalry. And in the case of the 2 men, they not only produced more sperm in their ejaculate, but the sperm was of better quality. People always come up to me afterwards and say, is this a fertility tip? And I'm like, well, if you want that kind of threesome and your partner likes evidence-based practice, then you can always give it a go. But here is the last musical break. We have reached the climax. I'm sorry it came so early. It was a little premature. But what have we learned? Well, we've learned that if it's possible, and if you can imagine it, and frankly, even if you couldn't imagine it, and it helps you in sex, it probably exists. We've learned that Phil here is a cheat, and that cheating is most likely going to happen. So what looks like the best strategy won't necessarily be the strategy that we see if it can be cheated. And if you are in doubt, just go for nice jeans. Thank you very much.